This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to this edition of Talk Business and Politics Daily. Joining me today on the program is John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. We'll talk about the Arkansas State Supreme Court. We'll talk about some things happening in the legislature, particularly around the grocery tax elimination and potential Medicaid funding. All of this and more on today's Talk Business and Politics Daily.
Talk Business and Politics Daily is sponsored in part by Impact Management Group and
Power. It's right there, waiting, ready to go when you are. Connect this, click that, unconnect and go every day. Delivered by your electric cooperative. Each unique, always united, and completely local. Born from a mission to provide dependable, sustainable, and affordable power to every corner of Arkansas. And delivering on that promise for a brighter Arkansas every day. It's the local hometown cooperative way. Better connected. Together. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas.
Well, let's give you a little preview of what to expect on the calendars this week at the Arkansas State Capitol as the 95th General Assembly enters another week of legislative activity. Governor Sanders' Access Act, her higher education overhaul package, is expected to run in Legislative Committee on Monday. On Tuesday, a bill to revamp the state employee pay plan will be heard in Joint Budget Committee. A bill to use nitrogen gas as a form of state execution is expected to be brought up by a Senate Judiciary panel on Wednesday. And there's likely to be a big change to a bill led by Senator Dan Sullivan, Republican of Jonesboro, to pull the Arkansas PBS board under the umbrella of the state education department. Sullivan says he is going to drop that provision of his bill. Also expect to see another run of Senate Bill 307, the Generating Arkansas Jobs Act. It failed by one vote in the Senate last week. Of course, you can keep up with our coverage on all of this at talkbusiness.net. When we come back, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Stay tuned.
Talk Business and Politics Daily is sponsored in part by Capital Advisors Group and
in the Navy, I train recruits. At Walmart, I recruit veterans. So many veterans have built their careers here.
I served in the Army for 11 years. I was promoted 4 times. Been with Walmart 9 years. I've been promoted 5 times.
I started as an hourly associate, and now I run the store.
430,000 veterans hired in the last decade. That's more than serving in the U.S. Navy today. There's no better place for veterans to work.
Connection. It's the heart of what we do. It's why we work to better the communities where we live and work. It's why we're expanding to get people connected and create digital equity programs that support affordable internet and digital literacy. We're leaders for positive change. From the way we empower our people, clients, and communities to the way we care for our planet. We live our values every day. We're Cox Communications, and we're pleased to connect with you.
Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to be with you, John.
And with you, as always.
Yes. Let's begin with, let's talk about our Arkansas Supreme Court has once again found its way into the headlines. I'm still not sure what they're doing. There was a per curiam order late in the week that called for the release of a human resources document that hasn't been done, but there's a deadline. And can you make heads or tails of any of this?
No. Next question. No. Well, the heads or tails I make of it is that it doesn't make sense always because the place seems to be so dysfunctional. It looks like the ones I call the 5 Republicans, the 5 on one side got together and put out a per curiam order about what the Chief Justice ought to do in a dispute about her wandering the halls and going into offices. And I don't think there's any indication that the Chief Justice Karen Baker and Courtney Hudson were there for the conference to do that. They just said they're not participating. They didn't. It's like 5 are just doing it and taking and issuing orders to the chief in a continuing kind of petty spat about who gets to appoint or hire some people or appoint people. and then people getting scared because the Chief Justice walked through the halls and went into a guy's office, and it's just it's a nest of pettiness and dysfunction that nobody's relenting on. When in fact, if it could ever be settled, where would it go? To the Supreme Court, you know? And right there, the Arkansas Court of Appeals down the hall has apparently issued scores of rulings in year 2025, and about all the Arkansas Supreme Court done is issue per curiams attacking each other and not seeming to be producing a regular workload. And it never changes, and it just keeps adding new elements. This is about Karen Baker, the chief, being accused by the staff of doing things that intimidated them, and they got a human services report, and now she's facing some sort of judicial discipline review, which worked for her own Supreme Court, of which she was chief, and now she's got Tom Mars saying, responding, and then now the five are saying, well, you've got to show us that report on you before we can decide. And it has passed from fascinating and curious to boring. Yeah. It's boring and silly.
I'll give you the pop culture analogy here. It's like you've been watching a Netflix series for a few years, and you enjoyed, the good stuff in the early years, and now they're on season 7 or 8, and you're like, they're just working it now to come up with some sort of plot to keep me interested, and it's too much.
That is an excellent observation. In this era of streaming TV, when you can binge watch or you can get into these long running series, the first season gets you, and the second and third, this is a brilliant observation, the second and third one is still good, and it hits you about the fifth one. I'm wasting time. They're running out of stories, and they're introducing new characters I don't care about. Yeah, that's what it's. But I don't think the characters are quite colorful enough to be a Netflix series.
And it's to the point where you've watched it this far, you got to watch it all the way through now. So,
well, we have no choice. It's our Supreme Court. Okay.
Correct. Let's move on. The food sales tax elimination. There has finally been a bill filed to, to deal with how they're proposing to eliminate the final 1/8 of a cent sales tax. We heard about the details of it last week. I think that, it'll sail through the legislature. It'll get signed into law. Does somebody test this to see if it's constitutionally sound?
Well, we still have, this 1/8 cent is still on there because it's in the Constitution. And previous governors and lawyers associated with them, I think, told them, can't undo that. That's set by the Constitution. Governor Sanders and her DFNA guys say, yes, we can, because it refers to state law and it merely authorizes the 1/8 of a cent sales tax. It does not mandate it, and it doesn't require the legislature to impose it, I guess, or budget the income if and they're making up those budgets for those agencies otherwise. And somebody might sue over it. But Romy, I'm not going to do that, and I would advise you not to. It's not a good look to sue, to force people to have to pay a sales tax. So I think they're going to pass it and get away with it, a sales tax on their food. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. Go ahead. What you're trying to argue with me? What is it?
No, I'm not arguing with them. I'm saying it wouldn't be politically popular to do that. You would definitely become public enemy number one for trying to keep a sales tax on groceries.
Yeah. I insist that poor people keep having to pay this 1/8 of a cent. I don't want to sue over that, and so I think that's how it's going to end up. By the way, if as the governor says, this is a regressive tax, and we've got to get rid of it because it's hard on the poor people. And Joe Biden, he woke up enough during his presidency to really raise food prices on us. Well, if you really believed that, local sales taxes on food are still going to be in effect. You're still going to be paying those. that power for local governments exists only by the permission of the state, because we don't have local control except on things the state expressly delegates. So if you really wanted to undo it, you could remove that authority and set up a way for local governments to raise property taxes to high levels and institute even a progressive property tax. I'm just saying, a lot of the rhetoric you hear is overblown about Biden's fault, and we make concessions to regressive taxation when convenient. Nonetheless, let's all celebrate that soon we will be paying 1/8 of a cent less in sales taxes on food items at the supermarket.
All right.
Okay.
I have an interview on Sunday morning with State Senator Bart Hester, leader of the state Senate, short on details on this particular subject, but big on the fact that there was an announcement in there that we will hear something. He predicts we will hear something on Medicaid funding this next week. This has been the subject of Washington, D.C. cuts. We've seen the House of Representatives pass a $880 billion reduction in Medicaid. Senate seems to be lukewarm on this. Nonetheless, Medicaid is a pretty integral part of our entire health system in Arkansas.
You think? Yeah.
Any cuts are going to be major in terms of its ramifications. Just knowing that something's coming this week that we might get some sort of detail on, what do you suspect it could be? What do you think the potential could be for how wide-ranging this ripple effect could be?
Are you referring to something in terms of state budgeting policy on Medicaid? Are you referring to that plus, or otherwise, are you referring to what the Congress is, Republicans in Congress who are going to propose about likely or essentially promised cuts in Medicaid? Which was Hester talking about? Which are you talking about?
Hester was talking about that he knows those cuts are coming down. We don't know how big they are, but they are making some sort of projections at the state level of what to anticipate.
Well, it's a federal state program. The federal government provides 3/4 of the money for most things, 90% for Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. The cuts are going, and Medicaid is the health care funding. Medicaid funds the healthcare infrastructure of Arkansas, rural hospitals, a lot of poor people, a higher percentage of poor people than most states who depend on it, nursing homes, asset depleted older people in nursing homes or disabled people, children's hospital, Our Kids First. I mean, it's the cuts in it are big for everybody, bigger for the poorer states, really big for Arkansas. One thing, we passed Medicaid expansion finally, but only with a provision saying that triggering that we won't have it anymore if the special federal matching rate of 90% is ever changed. I think we did, and so that rate is 90%. The other Medicaid is like 70 some odd percent, 71, 70 something. One idea that's mentioned is save some money by it's time to stop on the theory that it's time to stop this federal special incentive for Medicaid expansion and apply the same 71% in Arkansas, whatever the state matching rate is, to that. Which, if I understand right, and if that trigger is what I think it is, that puts Medicaid expansion out of business. And that this sounds alarmist, but it could take away in one stroke of a pen health insurance for a couple 100,000 people. So yeah, you can't get anything bigger in Arkansas than that, and any change to Medicaid, and it's the federal government. Trump wants to cut Medicaid through efficiencies. Well, but he's promising not to do anything that affects Social Security or Medicare. That's old people who vote in high numbers. Poor people don't vote as much in high numbers. It's I don't know what's coming. I don't want to be alarmist. I just want to say this is a real human story affecting people in a still relatively poor state. We're getting better. our Medicaid matching rate is dropping because we're doing a little better. But we're still got, I think, the fourth highest in the country. And then this Medicaid expansion, that's really something to keep your eye on. I don't know what's coming. A lot of this may be crying wolf, but we don't know till we know, and that's one potential effect. Is your understanding about this trigger what mine is?
That is. I think there is some more detail to it that I am not an expert on, but yeah, I do remember when 10 years ago or so when they did pass this, that if it ever went below the 90-10 rate, that it triggered a review or a cutoff or some sort of change in the policy there. And go ahead.
There are other opportunities. The state could take up more of the share, but it was hard enough to get them to pass it 4 or 5 sessions in a row with 90% federal funding. So it's not instantly, certainly dire, but it's the biggest thing on in the menu of things that could happen.
John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, my man. See ya.
And that is all for this edition of Talk Business and Politics Daily. Thanks for tuning in.